Joining me now live to discuss these and others is the founder and reformer of Kick Flair. I'm talking about Chef Juliet Aibe. It's good to have you join me on the program this morning. Glad to have you join me. Good morning.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning, Lagos.
Yes, let's get talking now. First off, let me get your thoughts about how current macroeconomic issues in the country right now is affecting your business operation in the area that you operate.
Thank you so much. When I heard your reports, it just felt so doom and gloomy. But I think it's all laced with plenty of opportunities, as a matter of fact. Yeah, it's been really tough and challenging, I would say. And however, with all those challenges come with it opportunities to kind of reinvent the process, pivot if you have to pivot, think new ways. As a matter of fact, have a paradigm shift in how you look at businesses generally, your brand, your services, and what the consumer also needs. You also want to use this opportunity to study consumer behavior so you can tailor your goods and services or product and services towards, customer satisfaction. Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So let's look at some of these issues that played out now. I'm talking about we have a new sheriff in town. The president came on board May the 29th, and then just immediately when it was being sworn into the office to take over as the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, he made a policy statement, and that policy statement is what Nigerians are still struggling to come out from. You are a business owner. Just yesterday, I went out to get fuel just to power up my generator and make my family feel comfortable, and it was quite shocking that some of the filling stations I went to have run out of the products, and the only filling station I was able to get fuel actually sold a liter of petrol for me for 635 naira per liter. Quite on the high side.
Yeah.
Now, you are also a player and you're doing business, and you're doing business on the dailies. You also have energy costs to also grapple with. Either you're paying your electricity bill, or you're also buying diesels or petrol to fuel your generator to generate your own electricity. Now, how has all of this, not to also mention the fact, not to leave out the fact that foreign exchange instability has also caused a kind of issues in the country now. With all of this, are you able to gain a balance and still in business? What are your coping mechanisms?
Wow, that's a tall one. It's been really tough, I must admit.
All right, great.
And the price of fuel has affected practically every other aspect of the value chain of any product you're going to be servicing to the community. So that fuel crisis thing triggered by the president's announcements on subsidy removal. And I'm thinking, okay, you remove subsidy. I've not seen any change in our general lifestyle. Have we now provided power supply constantly? We still haven't. So you remove subsidy, and then we now spend more to still power our generators. So I'm thinking, what's the whole hype? People are removing subsidy if it hasn't essentially trickled down to improve our quality of life. So I think we need to take the government up on that issue. What is the whole idea behind just removing subsidy, and then we still don't have quality of life? So I even think that our quality of life have dropped.
Yeah, of course it has.
If you're in the upper middle class, you're now middle class. If you're middle class,
I think we don't have any middle class again as it stands now. It's either you're poor, you're rich. Okay, so whether you can afford to afford 3 square meals a day does not really necessarily mean you're rich.
Exactly.
But what matters now is that you're just trying to strike the balance.
Yeah.
Okay, because no middle class is either poor or being rich.
Ironically, the rich is getting richer.
And the poor are getting poorer. Yes, that is what it is. Okay, so let's talk about the business operating environment in Nigeria. You have been doing business for how long now?
Over 20 years.
Over 20 years. How has it been for you? And how have you been able to navigate all those challenges, turning them into opportunities to see scale through and remain in business?
Good question. When I look back, I realized that every year I've been in business, I think was a very, very bad year.
Okay.
So I want to look back 10 years or 5 years from now to say, oh, it wasn't as bad as that.
Okay.
So I think it has to do with the mindset, pretty much, because things will keep changing.
Yes.
I mean, as that 5 years ago or so, dollar exchange was $1 to like maybe 250. Now it's
over 1,000 naira.
It's crazy.
It's going to 1,500. Yes.
So the best approach is backward integration.
All right.
We need to look inward. What do we have? The average Nigerian consumer has an imported appetite. If you go to the stores now, you see they're all stocked with foreign products, and we want to buy them over ours. And I'm like, why? People say, well, they're well packaged, they're good quality. You know what? If you don't patronize the local producers, they can improve on their R&D to improve on product quality. So you need to patronize them, give them feedback, and then make a demand on the quality you're looking for. And then those things will resolve. If you check the average producer, his raw materials are also still imported. So how can he compete with the global players when there's such a supply chain gap?
Yes.
So it's such a tough terrain to work in, but we need to have that conversation between all the stakeholders, the governments, the producers, policymakers, the consumers. And we all have this, like we're doing right now. I'm even calling into like, why are you buying foreign products? Once you understand the reason why they're doing that, we now show them, see, this is why we cannot produce quality products. We have to power diesel, a generator with diesel. We have to import our raw materials. We don't have that. So how can we now start producing our raw materials? So talk to the farmers. Now, the average farmer does not even know where its products go. He's just like, okay, I've already planted my crops. I just want one off-taker that takes everything once. And that's his focus. Why? He has to pay school fees, house rent, take care of his family. So he's focused on just survival instincts. Nothing like, okay, let me try and connect with who is buying it. What do they really want? So that I can grow the things that they really want. Or how can I keep production costs cheaper? How can I make my agricultural practices more smart, such that I can now maybe save inputs and then bring out a higher output. So this conversation is not happening. The average Nigerian is aloof, jaded, and looking for a way to leave Nigeria. And I'm thinking, no, let's sit down. I mean, those who are not living Nigerians, trust me, they're the entrepreneurs.
Yes. Those who have their interests vested into the country.
Yeah, they're not leaving. I mean, it's difficult for someone like me to leave. I mean, I have started such a remarkable advocacy on millets intervention. And I'm like, why can't Nigerians use millets to even bake their breads? Why are you relying on on imports of wheat grain? Do you know that Nigeria imports 98% of its wheat consumption? And just last year alone, even with the so-called let's try and grow wheat in Nigeria, just 13 states produce 4,000 metric tons of millets.
So how do we bridge that gap? Because this is a conversation, like you said, that we should be having at this point in time. On different forums, I was at an event where you were also a key stakeholder at, and then these issues were brought to the fore. And then we just keep going back and forth, keep saying the same thing, but nothing is being done in terms to implementation being taken by a well-structured action. At what point should we come to that conclusion and say this is what we need to do and take the right and decisive action? We are at the point right now. We are at the tipping points where we need to take a decision. Otherwise, we're going to fall into doldrums. Nigeria has capacity to produce her own food. As a matter of fact, about 60% of our arable land is left uncultivated. It's very true. That is very disturbing. So why can't we cultivate? So we need to go back to the farms. I think I sound like a broken record pretty much. Flour, sugar, butter, eggs, the notorious bad boys of the food industry. We import everything that has to do with those products, and they form our staple. We import eggs. I thought we have farmers in the country that go to the farm and then they try to produce that for us. Is it that the farmers in the country don't have the capacity to produce for the entire country? We import eggs indirectly because the feeds, the injections, all those things that we use to, do the cultivation of those poultry, they are imported. Let's talk about backward integration that you made mention of. I was having a conversation with a guest on my show, I think some weeks ago, and he said one of the reasons why some of these multinationals are leaving the country is because they refuse to take advantage of the backward integration mechanism to grow their own raw materials in country to save them the order of getting foreign exchange, especially now that foreign exchange volatility is at the increase. How do we begin to come up with policies from your own standpoint now, come up with policies that will aid backward integration for local manufacturers? Nigeria already has great policies. The problem is the implementation gap. We have that huge gap there, and that's the problem. There's a lot of posturing with all the government parastatals and agencies, not all, most of them, just posture that, oh, we're doing it, we wouldn't do that. But if you look at behind the scene, the actual execution of those policies, there's a big question mark. Now, you see all these multinationals living in Nigeria and the rest of it. Many of them are not living because they don't want to also engage local best practices, but because sometimes there's a lot of politics that go on behind the scene, and they have values they cannot compromise on, and because of that they leave it, as opposed to just tampering with all those things. And if you look at our government generally, I'm always the kind of person like, okay, let's not be bashing governments, let's try and engage in conversations. Let's try and see how we can see what they're seeing, because it's a matter of perspective. They see what they see, we see what we see. How can we marry those two to see what we really should be seeing as a country? So I feel like once we can sit down with stakeholders in governments,
those who craft the policies, who are those who implement? Those same people that make the policies? No. You need technocrats, you need entrepreneurs, you need farmers, you need innovators to bring to the table. And then let's not monetize everything. I was telling a friend of mine in our WhatsApp group that, see, once we want to import things into Nigeria, we should not even be collecting forex again. Let's exchange, let's do a barter arrangement.
Okay. For
this oil crude you're going to get, fixed power supply. Let's not even exchange currency anymore. Let's exchange infrastructure.
The currency is the main thing, because money makes the world go round.
It's not trickling down. It gets into a particular post and then you don't know what happens to it.
It fizzles out.
Yeah, exactly. So why collect the currency? Why, if you say you want to build a rail track, don't collect the money. Let's outsource the construction, so that way you already have infrastructure. You can say for the next 20 years, want to fix Nigerian infrastructure, and then barter that with what Nigeria is exporting. If you also look at the size of what we export from Nigeria to the rest of the world, is insignificant to what we import. So that's, inequality in trade, in import and export water balance. It's a problem. So I always say, to boost export earnings, Nigeria has to export not just raw materials, but finished goods. And that's why I'm here to advocate millets. Nigeria grows millet. Do you know, last year alone, from just 4 states, Nigeria was able to produce 13 million metric tons of millets. What are we using that for? We can use that to feed animals, animal feeds. We can use that to work in confectionery, like to make bread, to make. They're already using Katsina. Katsina is the #1 producer of millets in Nigeria. We can use all that back into the integration strategy to ensure that we boost export earnings. Why are we not doing that? We're not even exporting millets.